Hello everybody, this is Llodg, and today I want to talk about one of my favorite Star Wars trilogies, and that is the original Legends Thrawn Trilogy, written by Timothy Zahn. And if you don't know, this Thrawn Trilogy was like the first expanded content for Star Wars after the original trilogy, but it's still like one of the best pieces of Star Wars Legends stuff ever because it's basically a whole new trilogy with our favorite characters from the original trilogy. You got Luke, you got Leia, you got Han. They're going out, they're doing stuff. It's a great extension of the universe. And I think Timothy Zahn's able to add so much to this universe when there really wasn't all that much from the beginning to like bring up, you know, like there's no prequels yet, there's none of that stuff, there's not even any other expanded lore. It's kind of just what Timothy Zahn could kind of like go based off of those original movies, and I think he does a wonderful job with that. But yeah, last year I read through the whole trilogy, and it's still one of my favorite Star Wars trilogies, so I thought I would finally like talk about it. And I want to say before I get into this video, if you haven't read them, please read them. They're really good, and just be aware that the lore will conflict with one, this current Star Wars lore because there's no sequels in this point, and two, the prequels aren't even there yet, so there is conflicting like canon about how certain stuff happens. Just try to go into it with as open of a mind as possible, just so you're not like, oh man, this doesn't have the prequel stuff, or they got it wrong, or whatever. Don't let that stop you from enjoying these books, because they're really good, and I still really enjoy them. But yeah, so I thought I would first talk about the first book and probably the most well-known book of this trilogy, Heir to the Empire. So well known that even the Ahsoka show kind of like hinted at Heir to the Empire with its lines or whatever. But yeah, Heir to the Empire, one amazing title. That is what Thrawn is, basically trying to be the heir to the Empire. So if you don't know, Thrawn is an Imperial Grand Admiral, which is like one of the tops of the Imperials. And in canon, Thrawn still has this like white suit or whatever, and he's basically the same in canon as he is in these books. But Thrawn was such a great general, he's such a great tactician, but he wasn't there for the Battle of Endor. Thrawn is basically the reason in Pelian's eyes, which is Thrawn's second in command, why the Empire kind of lost at the Battle of Endor. Just because he's so great, and if he was there, he probably could have turned the tide of battle. And Thrawn is really great in these books. I'll get into that a little bit later, but he is very smart and is able to like tell what certain characters are going to do as they're doing it, which makes him an interesting character. And in the very first chapter, Thrawn's trying to find the Emperor's storehouse with all his like new technologies and stuff that he just wanted to keep for himself or whatever, but Thrawn plans to use them now because the Emperor's dead, but the Empire still has to live on. And he meets a dark Jedi called C'baoth, and his like first name's like Joris or whatever, but it's with two U's, which in these books, if you have two U's in your name, you're a clone. And also, Sith weren't a word yet, so I'm going to be saying Dark Jedi. But C'baoth is pretty much a Dark Jedi more likely because he doesn't realize what a Sith is. You know, he's just like crazy. Because this clone is really old, and clones in this kind of timeline in Star Wars, the older they got, the more crazy and like unpredictable they were able to get. And this guy's old, he's like taking over this planet, and he's kind of ruling over the native people. But Thrawn is one able to use them because he is a Force-sensitive person, and in Thrawn's eyes, the reason why the Empire lost at the Battle of Endor was because Emperor Palpatine had battle meditation, and I can't remember if they actually call it battle meditation, but it's basically battle meditation from the KOTOR games with like Bastila, where they're able to like turn the tide of battle. Now, I don't love this plot point because I think battle meditation is a little weird, and I wouldn't mind if it was just like never used in Star Wars. But the reason why the Empire lost is because when Darth Vader turned against the Emperor and killed him, Palpatine wasn't able to like use his battle meditation on like admirals or whoever was fighting the battle. And that's why they lost the Battle of Endor, and that's why a ship flew into the Death Star or whatever. I don't know, I kind of don't love that plot point, but it makes sense for the book, because Thrawn realizes he can use C'baoth as basically an emperor who can have like better strategies and plans because everyone will be on the same page and will be able to do things right when they're able to. But yeah, so Thrawn, really cool. Even from like the first moments, he is a formidable villain who is so memorable. Like his design is awesome in my opinion, and I wish we'd get more Chiss people in Star Wars because I think they're really good. And I will say one of my favorite quotes in this book, and it was one where Carde, who is like a kind of like a smuggler at the top of like the ranks, but he's like in contact with Thrawn because Thrawn's using his planet, because on his planet Mircure, They have these like force repellent like worm type things that can actually make it where if you're inside their like bubble, you can't use the force, which is great for Thrawn because, you know, he doesn't want this guy using the force on him. But when he comes in contact with Carde, there is an amazing description of Thrawn that I really love. The distant image of the Chimera disappeared, but it wasn't Pelian's face that replaced it. This face was a nightmare image, long and lean, with pale blue skin, and eyes that glittered like 2 bits of red-hot metal. It's just such a perfect, imposing description of him that I love, because from the outset, Thrawn is just a humanoid with blue skin and red eyes, but he is kind of scary. So yeah, I really like Thrawn. I'll talk about him more a little bit later, but I do want to talk about Han, Luke, and Leia, because for one, I really like Luke in the series. He's just written really well. Luke is still kind of naive in my opinion, but I'll get to that a little later. But Han and Leia, I think in this first Heir to the Empire book, they are probably the 2 weakest characters. Leia's actually pregnant with her and Han's twins, so that's like a really cool idea for them. But Thrawn is actually trying to capture Leia and also Luke for the twins because Seaboth actually wants them to turn them to the dark side, which is a overarching plot point of why Seaboth joins Thrawn and isn't like forced into doing it, because they actually work together to try to get these force sensitive people to turn them to the dark side. But that just means that Leia is on the run for like 90% of this book, and she just reacts the entire time, and it annoys me so much because I wish that they would actually make her do something beforehand, because for a lot of it it's either politics or she's on the run where she has to go to like Kashyyyk, which I realize they probably call Kashyyyk.
Welcome to Kashyyyk.
I don't know, Leia's story in this book isn't my favorite. It does give us a Wookiee who could talk English because he has a speech impediment, which I thought was kind of weird and they never bring back up in this trilogy. But while Leia is on Kashyyyk, she does find one of the Nogiri, and the Nogiri are the ones who are actually trying to capture Leia and Luke, and they're like these commando type people. This is gonna sound weird, but one of the Nogiri is actually able to smell Leia and realize, oh my gosh, she's a part of Darth Vader's lineage, and wants her to meet up with him later to like bring her to his people, because of a reason I'll bring up when I talk about the next book. But that's probably the most interesting part of Leia's story, and it's just a setup for the next one. And Han is kind of similar. He's with Lando for a bit, and I think Lando's actually a little bit better written than Han. Han isn't bad, but I feel like Han's like too good. And I don't know, I don't think Han does too much in this book. But Luke, on the other hand, is really good. At the beginning of the book with Luke, he sees a vision of Ghost Ben, and Obi-Wan's like, sorry, I gotta leave, I tried to stay for as long as I could, but us Force Ghosts, we have to move on after a certain point. And so there's no Force Ghosts, I guess, from this point in canon, which for Luke's story I really like, because Luke is going to eventually train these unborn twins, and he hasn't ever been a teacher, especially with a Jedi teacher, so he doesn't know exactly like how to actually teach them. Luke just thinks he's not going to be a good teacher for these kids. And so Luke goes to these different places to try like learn how to teach them. Like he goes back to Dagobah, he goes to like the dark forest, I guess, near Yoda's place, to try to learn something. He gets like a vision, which I think is really interesting, of the past, like an alternate reality, where he's about to like go into the Sarlacc pit, but someone there, instead of like being able to catch his lightsaber, someone forces it out of his hand, you know, and takes it from him so he can't like defend himself, and he gets pushed in and he dies. And it's really interesting of like, who is this character? Was this just like a bad dream? Did it have a meaning like when Vader was actually Luke in that forest? And it does have a meaning with Mara Jade, probably, other than Thrawn, the biggest new character that is introduced in this series. And I really like Mara Jade. I know she's kind of like over talked about in a lot of like Legends stuff, but I think in this book she's written really well, and I think she's like one of my favorite characters in this whole trilogy. But she's really cool because she used to be the hand of the Emperor, and she'd be like a secret agent who can like do these secret missions. And in Empire Strikes Back, when Vader tries to turn Luke to his side to overthrow the Emperor obviously overhears about this and sends Mara Jade to try to kill Luke. And he sends her kind of like she's one of Jabba's slaves, you know? And she's there to like assassinate Luke, but failed because she couldn't get on to Jabba's sail barge or whatever. So that's why she failed, and then she's now haunted by the memory of Emperor Palpatine, who keeps telling her to kill Luke Skywalker, and it's like in nightmares and stuff. So she kind of hates Luke Skywalker for killing the Emperor, and kind of cursing her to having a terrible life, but now she's a smuggler with the aforementioned Carde, so she has a pretty good life. But eventually they do meet up, because Luke did a cool little jump to get away from Thrawn, and his ship got stranded but got taken up by these smugglers. And after some talking or whatever, the smugglers learn that Luke is wanted by the Empire because of Seaboth or whatever, but also Luke's the rebellion hero, of course they're going to want him. But Carde isn't a bad guy, which I really like. They could have made Carde just like Jabba the Hutt, but a human, and just made him be like, okay, I'm going to give you immediately to press on the plot. But they don't, and Luke escapes, and then Mara Jade finds him, and then they have to like cross the forest of Mirkir through all like those like worms that get rid of the forest. So it's a really interesting section, and my favorite section of the book is just them two going through this forest. Because Mara hates Luke. Luke is like, you know, he's the good Jedi. He's gonna try to get Mara to turn away from this. But I like that Mara doesn't immediately be like, okay, you're not so bad. Mara hates him throughout this whole part, but is still able to work with him. And I just love that. Like, she's on the verge of killing him, probably all the time, but it's great. They just have a good relationship, I think, in this book. And I really like how the Force is used in this book. Animals are able to adapt with it and make it so other things can't use it. Like, that just gives Luke such an interesting dynamic, and it made me think that throughout this whole series, Luke was gonna have to fight Thrawn, but since Thrawn's like room is full of those worms, he can't do anything there. That's not really what happens at the end. That was just like my thinking. But they do at least give it to where Luke has to struggle through this. But the end of the book comes out with Thrawn trying to blow up this like certain like port, and with like Lando's help, they're able to like actually win. And it kind of ends on a cliffhanger where they have to like go back to Coruscant because there was like Admiral Akbar got like framed for something. It's not my favorite plot point in the book, but that's kind of like the main point of book 2, where there is some like political stuff happening with certain people trying to get the upper hand over others. But it also kind of leads us to Thrawn's Delta Source. And throughout basically the whole trilogy, Thrawn's Delta Source is a main point to where no one knows how Thrawn is getting this information, but he kind of already knows most of their moves if they plan it within Coruscant. Which I think is really cool because it leads some like intrigue about who's leaking the source. Is it this new character? Like, is it someone we know? Is it just someone random? Is it a droid? It's an interesting plot point, and I'll get to it later. But I'll talk about Han first in this book, because again, Han just does not do anything as interesting as everyone else, which I think is a shame. But he's kind of with Lando, and they kind of do like a bounty hunter thing. And Han and Lando are trying to find this Delta Source or whatever, like to try to get information, and they find former Corellian Senator Bella Iblis, and he's pretty cool. It's just kind of cool that he has like a previous relationship with Mon Mothma, and that's why he's not a part of the rebellion during the movies. It took till chapter 24, but this is where I think Leia's best moments are, and it's why I believe Dark Force Rising is my favorite out of the trilogy. But Leia goes to the planet of the Nogiri and kind of learns why they're serving the Empire. So a long time ago there was like a battle above the Nogiri planet, and one of those ships fell and kind of screwed up their environment so much that they can't really plant too many things other than this little area where they all kind of live. So the Empire came down, and this is like also, this is where the timeline is a little weird, because Darth Vader is there and is able to be like, if you come serve us as these like personal assassins, the Empire will restore your planet. But yeah, their planet's messed up, and Leia goes there and realizes that the Empire is kind of still poisoning their planet, so they kind of string these people along for as however long they want, because they're still following their promise, but they're just making it last forever. I think it's a great part of the book, because Leia is able to like turn these people over to her side, using her bloodline, using Vader, who's someone I think Leia should dislike very much. But I also really like this section because Thrawn actually comes in, and it's very tense, where 1, they can't find Leia, 2, they're trying to find the Nogiri who told Leia about everything, because he went AWOL. And it's like, these people are so like honorable that you think that they're going to give them up. It feels like if they make one wrong move, Leia's gonna get caught. They're gonna figure it all out. But it's so like perfect in my opinion, to where you feel the tension, but Leia's still able to do it, and I was a little worried they're gonna have Leia leave before she was able to do all the cool stuff. But it's really cool. It gave Leia a great storyline to follow, and it's much better than her just constantly reacting. She actually figures this stuff out. But this is like another one of my like dislikes of this book. Thrawn, I feel like, is not like the master tactician in this book. He fails like multiple times at stuff. But he is able to kind of like lead Luke to Seaboth. It took a little while longer, but he eventually makes it to Seaboth's planet in Wayland. And the reason Luke goes there is because he's still looking for a master to potentially, 1, teach him, and 2, give him some insight of how to teach these 2 unborn kids. And it's really interesting because Luke realizes, oh, maybe not every Jedi is the same. Maybe Yoda and Obi-Wan just had a very different idea of the Force than this other Jedi. Because Luke thinks this is a Jedi from the Republic era. He doesn't realize it's a clone yet. But while he's like teaching from him, he realizes, this is so different. This guy is, 1, mean to people, using the Force as like punishment when Obi-Wan and Yoda said never use the Force for attack. One of Luke's like biggest plot points is wanting to save Seaboth, which maybe he probably shouldn't because he's a clone who's gone crazy, but it's an important part because it's why Luke did what he did in Return of the Jedi. He wanted to turn Vader, and he did. Now, I don't know if Luke should always be, I can always see the good in people, because he couldn't turn the Emperor no matter how hard he tried, and it's not like he tried to stop Vader from killing him, you know? But I do like that he at least tries to save Seaboth. But Seaboth is all about control and just wants to be in control of everyone. And while this is happening, Thrawn actually captures Carday because he helped Luke in the last book. And Mara Jade realizes, oh, I gotta help Carday, because basically he's giving me a life after the Emperor. And the only way she can figure out how to get him out of Thrawn's grasp is to use Luke Skywalker's help. And I love this so much. Luke and Mara Jade having to work together when one of them doesn't want to is just such a good idea, and I love it so much. So Mara Jade actually comes and saves Luke from Seaboth by using those worms to like cut out the Force. And it's great because Seaboth is using some like mind control type stuff, you know, to like wear down Luke's like fortitude and will, to where eventually he'll break. But Mara Jade's able to get him out of there. They're able to go like into the Chimera and free Carday, and I love this section a lot. 1, it's more Luke and Mara Jade working together. And 2, it feels like a callback to episode 4 where they save Leia. Like Luke's even going up and down a trash chute. It's great. But this is another time where I think Thrawn like fumbled. Like he let Mara Jade use the codes and get everyone out of there. But as kind of like a thank you for saving Carday, Carday decides to give the New Republic the location of where the Dark Force is. And the Dark Force was these really old ships that like something went wrong and now they're like stuck in space and everyone who manned it were dead. But there's going to be all these ships now just like out in the open, ready for anyone to take them. And that would be a big help to the New Republic because they don't have enough ships. And so they decide to go there. And it's the big climax of this book. However, when they get there, Thrawn got there before them and got basically all of the ships but 3. And I love this part of the book because we also learn that Thrawn found the cloning facilities on Wayland and is actually cloning his best soldiers. But yeah, so they are able to like fight off a couple of the ships and able to get like 3 of these ships from Thrawn. But Thrawn kind of ends the book really winning. But Luke actually, he gets put out of commission. He's kind of like floating in space. And this is another part I love because Mara Jade, despite all her hatred for Luke, despite these like visions of the Emperor telling Mara Jade to kill Luke, Mara Jade ends up saving Luke. Now they aren't buddy-buddy, it's kind of like a more you helped me earlier, I'll help you again, you owe me now or whatever type of relationship. But it's great, I love it. And at the end of this book, Carday's like kind of helping the New Republic but kind of trying to stay neutral. But yeah, that's Dark Forces Rising, maybe my favorite book. I do remember wishing Luke and Mara Jade had more like chapters in this book because I felt like it was a lot of Han and Leia. And again, Leia doesn't get interesting till like chapter 24. And Han just isn't the most interesting part of these books. So I just wish it was more of a Luke story. But it isn't. In the next book, Luke actually does get a lot of screen time. Book 3, The Last Command. I like this book, I think. Maybe I expected it to be a little bit bigger. But the main thing is that Leia finds Delta Source, and Delta Source isn't like a person. Like most of the book, they think it's like a droid or whatever. But it's actually a part of the like tree roots or whatever that are in Coruscant. And it was probably for the Emperor to like overhear people who were talking about him in his own palace. I don't love this reveal because 1, it just feels kind of handed to Leia. And 2, Thrawn doesn't care that's been found out. He only says like Delta Source has been silenced. I was kind of hoping there'd be like some unraveling of him, you know? And yeah, throughout this book, Luke is trying to find the cloning facilities. And it makes sense for the story, but it takes a while to like get to where it's going, you know? And Mara Jade actually has a very interesting part where people are finding out about her past on Coruscant. Like Winter, Leia's like aide, figures it out. And it's like, oh, do we trust her or whatever? And I think that's fun. And like Luke also goes to the Nagiri home planet. I wish there was a bit more like stuff behind it when they also figure out Luke's another one of Darth Vader's heirs. Lady Vader's fine enough for Leia, so I guess they didn't want to like harp on that too much. But he does have like a vision of Leia like in distress with the two twins. And I really like this part because Mara Jade is actually able to, one, tell Leia that she is going to kill Luke, which I think is funny that she'd be like, no, I'm not going to lie to you, I'm going to do that. But then they also get like attacked at the Imperial Palace, and Mara Jade actually does help Leia and everything, and I think that's great. It's like, she's not bad. But eventually, and probably my favorite part of this book, is when they finally go to Waylaid to find the Emperor's storehouse. And you got Luke, you got Han, you got everyone there trying to go into this place to like blow up the cloning centers. But also Seaboth is there, and he kind of like goes against Thrawn, and he's really ruining a lot of Thrawn's plans. You know, he's like making people do stuff they don't want to do. But they all go to this place, and they all go for a final confrontation with Seaboth. And it's also interesting because this room has those same force-canceling warps. So Luke isn't able to use the Force really at all during this fight. And it's also interesting because Seaboth reveals that he cloned Luke, using Luke's hand that Vader cut off. So Luke has to basically fight a clone of himself. But it's really interesting because it's a similar version of the Emperor wanting Luke to strike him down to become a part of the dark side. And it's like, if you win this fight and you strike down this clone, you're going to be a part of the dark side. And it's an interesting part because Luke still also wants to save Seaboth, but he can't. And I love this part so much because Mara Jade obviously helps him. Luke's on like his back foot almost the entire time. And at the end, she gets this vision of kill Luke Skywalker. And so she ends up grabbing the lightsaber and killing Luke's clone, fulfilling the Emperor's wish and breaking her free of this, but also helping Luke to where she doesn't have to kill him. And it's just so great. I love it. And also throughout this fight, Seaboth is trying to get Mara Jade to join him also, because he just wants all the Force people. But using the same lightsaber, which was like Leia's lightsaber that killed the clone, Mara Jade kneels in front of Seaboth and then just strikes him down. Throughout this book, the Nogiri have really become Leia's like bodyguards. They're almost kind of like the Ale in The Wheel of Time, The Rising Shadow, which I really like. I love that when it went from them trying to kidnap Leia to her actually having them as bodyguards. But throughout their vast network, they're able to tell the Nogiri Rook, who's actually with Thrawn, what's happened and how the Empire has lied to them. And so in the final moments of this book, Rook actually betrays them and slices Pelian's neck and actually kills Thrawn. And Pelian survives. But Thrawn has one of my favorite ending quotes ever with, "But it was so artistically done." Like, that is just perfect for Thrawn because he also just loves art of different people, and the way he was able to actually fall from getting outplayed is just perfect. Like, I'm so glad it wasn't just Luke taking him down or whatever, you know? And I think it's a wonderful end to Thrawn's character, even though we only have 3 books with him. I think the ending really carries this book for me. I think for the most part, it's good. Luke and Mara, they don't end up in like a relationship yet, which I love. I love that it's like slowly built up throughout these books. I just really love this trilogy. Honestly, for this video, I kind of wanted to reread it. I even brought out my box set with the new Legends stuff. I think the new covers look really cool. I love the art for them. Timothy Zahn has also done a lot more Star Wars books. For one in canon, he has like 2 Thrawn trilogies. I know in the EU, he also has the like Hand of Thrawn duology, and I think another book with like, it's called like Survivors or something. Let me know what you think about the Thrawn trilogy, if you think I should read any other Star Wars books, because I've been slowly reading Star Wars books. I hope you enjoyed the video, have a good day, and goodbye!